Joe Bonamassa was on tour in the UK during May 2023, and we were there, so stay tuned. So we know that Joe is a hugely successful blues guitarist with a worldwide following of loyal fans. But how did it all start? Born in New York in 1977, he started playing guitar at the age of 4 when he was given his first instrument by his father, who had a guitar store. In 1989, he opened up numerous shows for the legendary guitarist B.B. King and had a band called Smokin' Joe Bonamassa, which he performed in on non-school nights in New York and Pennsylvania. By 2000, he released his very first studio album called A New Day Yesterday, which paved the way for 14 further albums, 18 live albums, and 4 collaborations with other notable artists such as Beth Hart. That's a staggering 37 albums in 23 years, which takes some serious doing. He is simply a guy who does not stop after a tour, who is straight into the recording studio, either recording new material or guesting on other artists' recordings. He has also played at prestigious venues such as the Royal Albert Hall in the UK, which he did for the very first time in 2009. But equally, Joe is also known for just turning up at local clubs to join in small jam sessions. But here in Blackpool on the west coast of the UK, Joe has a personal connection to this area from his early days of his career, performing at the Kite Club, which back in the day was located on Kent Road at Blackpool. Joe played in this working men's club. Joe is also an authority on historic and vintage guitars, and also a collector of these very fine instruments and amplification, some of which you will see on stage. He admits that his collection is simply there to be used, but what is equally important to him is the forging of new relationships throughout the guitar collecting community. Being the artist that he is, Fender, Gibson and Epiphone have worked with Joe to produce some fine reproductions of his better known instruments. One example being the Bludgeon, which is an exact replica of his 1951 Nocaster that was reproduced in fine weathered detail by Fender's custom shop in 2021. Gibson's custom shop and Joe designed and produced a Pelham Blue Les Paul Firebird hybrid called the Bonabird in 2015, which is a unique design limited to just 100 being made. Having looked at his professional life so far, you can see that Joe has been very busy and there is very little in the way to suggest that it's going to slow down. For 2023, Joe played 5 dates in the UK, which were mostly arenas, but just one venue stood out against the rest in our hometown at Blackpool's Opera House. So we got tickets, we went along to watch Joe and his band. Okay, so Joe Bonamassa and his band were touring the UK this year during May 2023, 5 UK dates. Most of these were in arenas. As you know, Gigs and Guitars are based in Blackpool, and Joe Bonamassa was doing a show at Blackpool Opera House.
It's nice to be back in Blackpool. We've been coming here for 20 years. We'll never forget Blackpool. Whenever he says, hey man, you can play other pools like Liver, you know, all these other pools. I said, fuck it, man. I'm coming to Blackpool. It's where I started in this country. This is where I started my
When Joe Bonamassa's tickets went on sale, I naturally jumped at the chance to go and see the man himself, but it's not the first time I've seen him. I saw him at Preston's Guildhall a number of years ago. We're right at the front. I have to say, it's probably one of the best ever guitar tones I have ever heard in person. I was stood in front of the PA system, so I could hear the natural tones from his Fender Tweed amps, which were behind baffles. And I have to say, it's probably one of the best guitar tones that I've ever witnessed. So the show kicked off at 8 o'clock. It was a really good vibe in the audience there. And what I do like about places like Blackpool Opera House, it has a unique charm of its own. Unlike these arenas, which I find are sterile, the acoustics aren't very good. When you go to a proper kind of theatre, it really does add to the experience. I'm really glad that Joe did decide to play at Blackpool Opera House, which kicked off with Evil Mama. Dust Bowl was the second track in. Now that has to be one of my favourites for the night for personal reasons. I do like the haunting guitar riff at the beginning, which Joe does very, very well. There's one of those tracks out of the night that I would want to play myself personally. It would be Dust Bowl, but there is another one as well. Anyway, we'll go through the list. Love Ain't a Love Song, Self-Inflicted Wounds, I Feel Like Breaking Up Somebody's Home Tonight, I Want to Shout About It is another one, Double Trouble, we all know that one, which is very good. I Don't Think She Would Do It, followed by A Conversation with Alice, Happier Times, and then we get towards like the end of the night when you've got Lonely Boy, Just Got Paid, great track again. This is the other track that I would love to play. His encore for the night was Mountain Time, and that was just brilliant. We've got a great stage setup, the lighting's great. I'm going to talk about the sound. Now, this is the only negative, and if you've watched this channel before, it's something I do keep repeating. Within the sound mix, the kick drum on the drum was too loud. Got Lamar Carter on drums, and throughout most of the show, you could not hear Calvin Turner on his bass guitar, which I thought was not good at all. When you've got, say, for example, a track that comes up where everybody's playing a bit more sympathetically, the volumes come down, the mood and feel is changing. I could see that the drummer was basically trying to play as light as possibly could with the top end of his drum kit, but with his kick drum, he couldn't do anything about it. It was out of his hands. Now, I like to back these up by evidence, so have a quick look at this clip and you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, on stage was Josh Smith. Now, if you've not come across Josh Smith at all, I suggest that you do. Check him out on YouTube. He's all over social media platforms, streaming services like Apple Music and Spotify. Check out his albums. Josh Smith is a wonderful artist in his own right. And I would probably almost agree with what Joe Bonamassa said. He was very polite to Josh Smith, and he said that Josh Smith was probably the better of the two guitarists on the stage that night. I would probably differ with my view. I would probably say both are the same level of calibre, but very different in their approach. Joe Bonamassa's guitar work, he's got a big, thick, full sound with whatever guitar he's playing. He might be playing, say, for example, a 50s Strat with a maple board on it. It still sounds quite fat. Josh Smith, who did two great guitar solos that night, he came on and stepped forward with a bright, dynamic, not too trebly, but it's a brighter tone. And the two guitarists complemented each other very, very well. We all know that Joe Bonamassa loves a great story with his audience. So sit back and have a listen to this clip, which I think you will enjoy.
There was an incident earlier in the backstage where one of the fire doors was left open. And some of you up in the upper balcony thought it was the way to the, as you would call it, the loo. So as I was getting dressed, this one gentleman who happened to pop into my dressing room when I had nothing on but boxer shorts, some socks, and my good intentions. You owe me money. That's a VIP package that's worth at least $5,000 right there.
Now, we all know that Joe loves his marketing, he's big on social media, he bangs out loads of stuff all the time, and I think he's missing a little bit of a trick with his audience. The same people got up and down and went outside. I don't know quite what show they were doing, but if you were to brand Joe Bonamassa wee bags, I think you might be onto something. We'll just talk about his guitars for a minute. From where I was sat, I didn't have a particularly sort of detailed view of what he was playing. Yes, there were Gibson Les Pauls. Yes, there's Gibson ES335s. There's a beautiful Gibson Vintage Flying V that made an appearance during the night. That sounded fantastic and it looked great. One of the most notable guitars that I did see that night, and I'm pretty confident it was his Fender Nocaster, the Bludgeon, which you've seen earlier in this video. Distinguished because it has the big humbucker in the neck position there. But I couldn't tell you exactly what the Les Pauls were in terms of, say, for example, the Kudos nature, who owned them previously, what the history is. All I could say is that they're obviously going to be vintage Les Pauls, probably sort of 59 bursts or something like that, but I cannot be sure. But the sounds and tones were absolutely fantastic. So in conclusion, general feedback from the audience was very, very good. The show itself, the production was very, very nice. And we've talked about the bass drum and the issues with the bass drum, and that was the only negative for the night for me. So from Gigs and Guitars, I would give Joe Bonamassa 9 out of 10 for this show. It probably would have been a 10 out of 10 if the sound was EQ'd correctly, but that's about it really. It was a great night. The audience enjoyed it, I loved it, Michelle enjoyed it, and we came out of there with a great vibe. Joe was the last person on stage. He did not want to leave. That's the type of guy he is, and you'll see that in the video. We're still there waving at people. Everybody else has cleared off. Once Joe has left the stage, you've got an army of, it's almost a military operation. I've never seen it before at the end of the gig. Hard hats on, high-vis jackets. Everybody was in there. I went down to the front of the stage to see if I could get a clip of Joe's pedalboard. By the time I'd got there, it'd gone. It was so efficient in getting that show closed down and out on the road to the next venue the next day. That was just worth watching in itself. Sorry guys, I'm gonna have to blow my nose. This hay fever's driving me nuts at the minute. So, would I go and see Joe Bonamassa again? The simple answer is yes, I would. My top tip of the day is if and when Joe comes back to the UK, get yourself some tickets. Should he play a venue very similar to the Blackpool's Opera House, you'll get a far better experience in venues like I went to that night. If you've enjoyed this edition of Gigs and Guitars, please subscribe, it will help the channel, and there's always time in the day for a brew. Cracking.